something is bugging me. So what I'm going to do is something quite drastic, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people who think, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Chop back probably here or maybe even here. Air layer, let's shoot to chop back. Why, you ask? Let's take a look. Let's delve into this forest a little bit and I'll explain you why I'm going to do what I'm about to do. Chopping is easy. I don't need to explain all that much. Seeing how it develops, however, is important for you to understand how do I grow better bonsai myself. Here at the bottom you can see there are two big pruning scars, and there's a side branch and a main branch, and the continuation is ugly. It's quite big. It looks like a lump. At the same time, here on top there's also old pruning scar, an old pruning scar, an old pruning scar, and here multiple small branches have grown, having been removed, leaving lots of scarring. Here there's a very ugly cut that I tried to repair last year, but it didn't really work. It created big calluses, so this is going to have to be chopped off. The same here, there's a big lump here that I don't really like. This is the fattest trunk, so this should very clearly be the biggest tree in the composition. It is now quite thin, so what I'm thinking is if I'm cutting this one off, I'm chopping this one back and maybe removing the height of this one a little bit, because it's actually the thinnest in the composition but also the tallest. This one I'll let shoot for a year to fatten up, and hopefully in 2 years time, 3 years time, the forest will look similar to this, but without these very ugly scars in the top. So at this point in time it's not very important to worry about healing, and in late winter I'll clean up the cuts in a hope that it reduces the thick callousing that I've seen. I'm just going to do a perpendicular cut, and with that I hope that some buds will pop here. And in springtime I'll clean up the cut a little bit better. I want a branch to pop in the front so that the cut is in the back. But for now it's just reducing the height. Now if we look at this leftmost branch, there's of course these big knobs, and I could cut this area off, but then I'm still not happy here about this top. There's another cut here, so I'm going to start completely afresh, hoping that a bud will pop here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 or 10 years this has taken to grow, but the first, well, third was only 2, 3 years. 3 years to regrow. A little bit cut paste putty on top of it, so that it doesn't dry out and it actually gets bud as close to the cut as possible. Here the same thing. I know this all looks very drastic and it's hard to explain, but what you see here is this is thinner than here. There's a big wound, there's a scar there, there's a dead section here, and there's another scar here in the background. So all in all, this whole section is very unattractive, whereas the rest of the trunk coming up is nice and smooth. So cutting it off here and hoping for a bud to pop will result in a nicer, smoother trunk line over time. I didn't prune this one because here the trunk is actually pretty nice. There's no big scars. It's just very thin and tall. So I'm going to air layer it because I can still use a few smaller trees. I have a few cuttings, but those are much smaller, and this is a nice medium sized to get in there. This is roughly what has come off. Quite big lumps, and I know this looks like it could be a nice tree, but really with all the big cuts it's never going to be a pretty tree. So yeah, sometimes in bonsai you just have to take 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward. Right, midsummer. This tree has grown really, really well. Time for a haircut. I meant, of course, giving the tree a haircut, not me. I'm going to keep top branches in check quite strongly, just like that. And then the lower branches like these, I'm going to allow to extend for the rest of the season. Next year I'll prune them back in spring, or maybe even over winter, but I intend to keep some of these lower runners as they aid in fattening the lower trunk, help general build up strength. This is a separate tree. I don't want to fatten this one up, I just want to develop it as a nice small plant here on the side, so I'm just going to prune back as regular to 2 or 3 leaves, thinning it out, and in winter I might wire it out a little bit and prune it more cleanly. I am a little bit concerned. The leaves are not nice and dark green. There's a couple of reasons that could cause that. First reason I already dealt with last night. I added a load of fertilizer. It could just be that there's not enough fertilizer. On the other hand, it has been very hot, it has been very sunny, and this tree sits in full sun all day long. And the substrate is, to be honest, quite dry. There's not a lot of organics in it. It's basically pumice and expanded shale. Not much more than that. So I think it is just too dry, so I might have to water it a little bit more than I have been doing so far. Let's take a look at this air layer and see whether it has rooted by now. So this is the main pruning done. Now what I want to do is I want to look at this air layer and see if it has rooted, and if it has, I'm going to plant it up separately and later on use it, plant it in this forest. If there's roots, cut it off and otherwise re-wrap it. I want to really use it, so I'm just going to open it up and take a look and re-wrap if it needs to. Not ideal. Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt now. Wait, look at that. Don't want a very thick root base, but this is enough to plant it in the forest. Last week of September. Good sacrifice branches here coming up. So now I can deal with these ugly stump cuts that I have everywhere. And we can take a look at the ones that I already worked on over summer. Let's reduce these, make a nice transition so that before the winter really hits, they can start healing, and in spring, when this take off, they'll close over. That's pretty much closed. Here you can tell a little bit of bark coming up along the cut side, which means that this is now stabilized, and I can prune it back all the way down to here to make a smooth transition. This of course now looks like I've made the situation worse, but by removing so much here, I've actually created the wound that the bark can grow over and later on look natural. It will take a little bit longer, but it will look better in the end. And of course, the same story for all the other ugly cuts and stumps. Nice and smooth so that the bark can really grow over it without creating a lump. So it needs to be fairly deep, and it might be deeper than you think is necessary. 10 minutes and then it is left to grow again for half a year. Bonsai is not about the work, it is about the patience. But these are now all set to grow out, close off, and this become a new trunk, a continuation. This is allowed to grow a little bit more because I still want to fatten this up. And yeah, in spring I'll do a quick prune, or in winter I might repot because it's been in the pot for a little bit now. I'm going to add a few more trees. Getting somewhere. Right, we are the end of May. The Zelkova Forest has recovered tremendously from the repot, and as you can tell I've just let it go. The young additions that I planted here, I think all of them have taken, and also the escape branches that I'm letting grow out here to heal these wounds and to create a nice general tapered connection to the old trunk. They're really doing well. All in all, quite pleased with the tree. I think it's time for a little bit of a prune. I'll show you how the scars are starting to heal over, because it's really cool to see the little rolls of callus coming over. And then I'll just prune it to avoid the top becoming too heavy. I want the lower branches to develop more, so I'm going to just prune these back to maybe 2 or 3 buds on places where I don't need extension growth. I'm going to leave the long younger ones in place and let them grow out a little bit more. They need to develop more because I'm going to prune them back later. Yeah, but so far so good. Very pleased. Now when pruning, it's always good to not just blindly go where people tell you where to go. If they say to just prune to 2 leaves, and I look at this one, there's a leaf here and there's a leaf here. If I were now to prune it here, then this bud and maybe that one, but certainly this last bud will start extending. And in which direction will it extend? Well, it will extend in an angle of about 30 degrees away from the branch that it's attached to, so it is going to go inside the tree. However, if I prune it here, then this bud will start extending and that will come towards the outside. So that's what we'll do. Same here. Do I want it to extend this direction or that direction? Well, because there's a bud coming in this direction, if I would leave this bud and it also goes, then they have competing interest. They are parallel and therefore they compete for the same sunlight. So here I'm going to go for this one, and now this one will extend this direction and this one will extend that direction, creating space in where they're growing. And this is something that you try to do everywhere where you prune. You look for which bud do I want to extend. Of course, I'm not spending hours thinking about it. I'm just going through the tree and I'm just pruning off branches. But this is what's happening in the back of my mind when I'm pruning. Although I'm allowing these sacrifice branches to extend, I do remove the foliage from the bottom part of it. This reduces the amount of shade that these sacrifices give to the upper canopy that I also want to develop. But one thing is bothering me, and the thing that is bothering me is that when I made these slanted cuts, I actually didn't think about the front and the back of the tree. We've seen quite aggressive growth here along the edge of the wound and here as well. For this one, fortunately, the cut is sideways, so yes, there's a little ridge, but it isn't all that visible from the front. But this cut is very visible, that here it is a lot thicker than there. Now I have this little side branch here. This will have to provide my future top, and that means for this isn't this great? Look at that color. Some of the leaves are still quite big, but most of the leaves are really tiny. These over winter I will probably prune off, and then in another season or two the crown really will start to come together. I'm really pleased with what it looks like now in fall. Can you just imagine what it will look like in a nice spot instead of plastic? It's early spring and I really don't want these sacrifices to get too big, so now it is time to reduce them. I'm not going to reduce them all that much. I'm going to make it a slower cut so that I first allow the tree to get less dependent. So there's a tiny little bud here. I'm still in the process of fattening this up because I don't want it to be a thin tree. On the other hand, I also don't want to create a new very big cut. Now there's a few branches here that could serve as a top. This little one has actually died off. That's not a good sign. This also has died off. But maybe if I just make the cut here, I will get new buds developing here. Or I could go all the way down and say, well, this is actually not all that interesting, and I'll grab one of these. But probably if I just reduce this length, I will get lots and lots of action here, and then I decide later on how much further down I'm going to go. And what we see here, of course, is the callousing over. Nice. It's almost closed. Maybe a little hard to see, but here in between all these branches, this has nicely healed over, quite smooth, so it's less ugly than it used to be. And over time I hope it will just get better. And here is the flush cut that I made last summer. This branch I'm now going to let run for a little bit, and once it has enough strength, then I'm going to smoothen this out. And with these big sacrifices gone, I can of course now just go through the tree and decide, well, longer extensions I'm just going to remove, thin it out again, because as before, this grows quite well, but it also means you get a lot of heavy branches in the top that I really don't want. This is the one I want, but this one I don't really want. There is a nice little side branch. Oh no, that's dead. Anyway, this is a long pruning session that's really not worth showing here right now. Pruning the top much more than the bottom as before, thinning it out. Now, halfway through the pruning, up to here I've pruned, you can see the big difference in foliage mass. This is all opened up now. Now the sun can go all the way in, reaching the lowest branches here on the inside as well. And now I just need to do the same thing on the other side. Did I ever mention that this has too many branches already and it's going to get denser, denser, denser. And with this it is all pruned back. It is ready to go back into the sun. This is of course still way too pointy. I am aiming for a rounded canopy, but this needs to get some back budding, then I can reduce this further. This can be reduced, this is going to grow out a little bit more, and this will fill up over the years, and then I'll get a nice rounded canopy. But this is really getting much better. And now it's just a matter of growing, pruning as I've been doing now. It needs a bit of fertilizer. I don't fertilize this forest all that much, to be honest. Water it well, back into the sun. We're in June, and look at what happened. This has become nice and strong, and I can actually remove this tiny little side branch that stands here and open it up. But also look at the whole composition, how full this has gotten. So I can now go through, remove all this crotch growth, because that is what Zelkova does. If you prune back, like I've done here, then instead of continuing that branch, it will throw a bud in the next junction. So this really is annoying. You have to constantly remove this, otherwise the original branch weakens and you get these buds, knobs forming. Don't want knobs on my tree. So this is quite a labor-intensive forest. I'm learning. More importantly, this has thrown quite a few buds. So I don't want this going inwards, I want something going outwards, and the question is it this one or is it that one? This is still fairly straight. Do I have clippers? Yes, I have clippers. There we go. Off with his head, the queen said. And now I'm just going to do what I do with Zelkova. I'm going to thin it out and prune it back. And I'm not going to show you, because this is another 15 minutes I can add to the video. Well, it is the middle of July and these top branches have grown considerably. They are a lot stronger now, and now it is time for me to look at these top cuts, clean those out so that this can heal over a little bit before winter, and then in winter I can prune these back again to the first or second node, and that way gently create more taper without getting these big nubbins in there. Then next to that I'm just going to prune off this back. Don't think I need to show all that much, because I think I've shown all of that in previous parts of this video. And so let me just look at these top cuts, show you how I clean them up, and then I'll show you a final image after the pruning. And this is really what shows me that it is time to start working on this top cut. You see here a little bulge that starts to appear. That is this branch swelling up so much that it's starting to push over this cut area. And I want this to be very, very deep, because I've noticed that Zelkova creates really thick callus. So I want to go a lot deeper and a lot shallower than I normally would. And then of course cover it with cut paste, because otherwise it's going to dry out and I get an even uglier scar. I try always to cut from the outside in with this tool. In other words, I push the outside through the bark rather than the other way around. I hope you can still see what I'm doing. Now this is tricky. I want this edge to be gone, but I don't want to ruin the callus that has formed already too much. Right. And then I said I want this edge to be quite narrow, because I have seen the very heavy callus that it creates over these wounds. I'm going to go quite deep here, and then with a knife I'm going to clean out the edge a little bit more. And this of course now will take 2-3 years also to heal over. And that's definitely not going to be all in this video anymore. Well, this has also gotten strong enough now. Again, a quite steep angled cut, making for a very nice thin transition, allowing for colors to have some space without straight away creating a bulge. And now just hope I didn't take off too much so it dries out. And that's where the cut paste helps. Right, the intended front before pruning, but after removing the stubs. I said I was going to leave these to grow, but I also realized that we might have a few storms passing through. So I'm reducing them a little bit in length, because otherwise they might break out of the now much weaker connection points. These smaller ones are still okay. I don't want a twin, I just want one. And this one can also still go. Now let me just go through the tree, thin it out, prune it, and show you exactly the same view in 10-15 minutes. See you then. All pruned back and thinned. This is ready for the rest of the season, and I mainly now need to take care of buds popping again here in the elbows, in the knuckles. So this is what I need to clean out. What I've done also, which I think is a big improvement, I have moved this little tree and I've pulled it here on the rim of the pot a little bit down, so that the angle of the trunk is from almost vertical to slanted out. And this one was almost laying flat here on the rim of the pot. And I used a pulley wire here, a guy wire, to pull this up. Now these two trunks are not crossing each other anymore in the frontal view. And I think this is an improvement. You can flip back and forth to see whether this is actually better. Besides that, not much has happened. I've just removed a bucket, literally a bucket of foliage from this whole composition. It's now again completely open. There are no more triplicates in the tree, and most of these branches are quite horizontal. And that I find quite important, so that you don't get these pipes going straight up into the tree. Now here in the back, this was a very long branch snaking down, and I've removed it because these trees have now taken over. I've left a stump here, and this stump can now start budding and also fill this back space a little bit. But it doesn't need all that much. There we go. It's early spring again. It's pushing. It's looking good. I think it is actually looking really, really good. I can do a prune back, I can do a thinning, and I'm going to do a prune back and a thinning. I'm looking here at these cuts, and these cuts are starting to close over. It will take a little bit longer. The smaller ones here, they have healed over. These ones have pretty much healed over. This one is near invisible. This one I might need to prune back a little bit further, but I think it might also look good this way. Yeah, let me just prune this back, and then I think I'm going to call it a day. And really nothing special, right? It's just like we've been doing all the time here. Removing long growth. This I don't want, well I actually do want it, I don't want it that long. Here I'm going to remove this one. So all pruned back. Let me now just bring you in closer so you can have a look at a few of these cuts and how they are healing. You see here, completely grown over, and over time this will just smoothen out and become invisible. Here's another very big chop, which also is healing over very nicely. I think it is actually closed. It will take another year or two to really smoothen over, and I can clean up these edges a little bit more. And then also looking from the front, you hardly see the cut. So this is one of the forward facing cuts. It is starting to heal over. I'm still contemplating whether I should just make a slanted cut and use this as the new leader and take it off here. What are your thoughts? Pop me a comment. And yeah, I think with that, this forest is pretty much done. Mind you, it will need a little bit more of development, but the basics are set, and now it's a matter of regular maintenance, except for this cut maybe. I think this is the only cut that I still am contemplating. For the rest, this is the forest as I want it to be. This is Zelkova serrata as a forest. If you're wondering how to put a forest together, I've got a funny video about how not to put a large forest together. That's this one. And if you're just looking for whatever I just published, my most recent video is right there. This was Jelle, growing bonsai. Keep doing that. See you next time.